Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Careers with Miss Doyle. Today we've got a very exciting person to interview, who's called Peter Reavill. He is the Finds Liaison Officer at the British Museum for the Portable Antiquities Scheme. So he records objects that are found, or historical objects that are found by the public. So hi Peter.
Morning.
Hi, nice to speak to you today. Thanks for giving us your time. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you came into this work? What happened? Your choices from GCSE, your A levels, your degree, and how that brought you to your current job.
Yeah, sure. So I'm originally from Kent, from a sort of a farming and sort of my dad was an accountant and my mum was a postmistress. So I'm sort of from a normal everyday family, and as in I really enjoyed. I was a swot. I enjoyed school, and I wasn't particularly good. I wasn't particularly bright. I wasn't particularly clever, but I'm slightly dyslexic, and I found lots of things that everybody else found easy were particularly hard for me. So I decided to go with the things that I was good at when I chose my GCSEs, which were history, geography, and I did a lot of music. So I also continued with music. Had a real passion for reading, real passion for sort of literature, and so did English. But the sciences were always a bit complicated and hard for me, and it wasn't something that I excelled with. So, as in, I ended up picking other GCSEs that sort of seemed to fit around my main interests. But as in, from probably about the age of 10 or 12, I really wanted to be a teacher. I thought that was going to be the one career for me, and that's how I structured sort of my choices at GCSE and then through to A level. At A level, I decided to do history, geography, and music, and I also started an English Lit A level. But as in the work was too much for me, and so I dropped the English Lit. Four was a lot, and we also had general studies, which was a nondescript bit of everything A level. And because I really thought I'd be able to do the English literature, but sort of halfway through the course, I had to sit down and say, well, do I do 4 badly or 3 better? So I ended up sort of specialising in English, in history, geography, and music. And as in, I had quite a talent for music. I used to sing a lot, sort of Baroque singing, and I also play brass instruments. And I had the opportunity to possibly follow that through a career in sort of the Royal Academy and things like that. But again, when I got to A level, I wasn't good enough. As in, I achieved things. I got a grade 8 in my music, but I wasn't good enough to sort of reach the pinnacle. And there's nothing worse than being almost quite good enough. So I dropped that and went to study History and Archaeology at Bangor University after my A levels. The history was the passion. The history was the one I really thought I was going to excel in, and I really enjoyed sort of medieval history, and so the archaeology fed really well into that.
Can I just ask you then, when you do select to do sort of a history degree, because I did a history A level and I studied the Tudor history, so it was it was focused on a certain area. I believe the curriculum now in history sort of covers more of the, you sort of cover the whole of the British history. When you do your degree, how does that work?
So I ended up, the first year is like a grounding, so you basically follow set parts of history. And because I was in Wales, I did a lot of Welsh history, a lot of Welsh medieval history, and that was sort of fairly straightforward. But when you get to your second or third years, you're allowed to specialise in more sort of in-depth sort of subjects, and that's where I found the strengths were, because I ended up having to study. So part of my history first year was on modern Welsh politics. And I had, as in modern Welsh was 1850 to 1950, and I had no interest in it whatsoever. I just had to study it to get through that, to get to the next thing. And so I think it was sort of, sometimes you just have to bite down and go, I really don't enjoy this, but I know that I've got to go through it to do the bit that I do enjoy. And that can be really hard, especially if you're away from home. And sort of, I was sort of 250 miles away from my parents and my family. So there were lots of places where I wasn't very happy, but the knowledge of getting through that and enjoying the bits that I did enjoy was what got through me through. And it was actually while studying these things and having the archaeology alongside, I found that the more I studied the archaeology elements, the more happy I was and the more I enjoyed myself. And that was something which sort of really surprised me, as in I thought, as in I had this career aspiration, I was going to teach, it would be amazing, I'd go to secondary school, I'd be the best teacher in the world. But actually, the more I studied the archaeology, the more I realised that I was quite good at it and I really enjoyed it. And the reason I enjoyed it was as much about practical aspects of being outside and digging holes and understanding processes, as it was about sort of it being in the library and sort of learning facts.
Okay, so when did you get the job then? When did you start working for the British Museum? Did you do anything in between, or did it sort of...
Yeah, so I graduated and did a summer of excavation and realised that it was really badly paid, and I was sort of living hand to mouth. And I moved with my partner, my girlfriend at the time, to Cambridge because she had an offer of doing a master's at Cambridge. And I went and joined a museum. I worked at the Fitzwilliam Museum, and shortly after that I moved to the library and started cataloguing books, which is very similar to cataloguing objects. And that I thought, well, that's so interesting, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. And I had to make a decision sort of a year into that of whether this was what I really wanted to do and I go on and study librarianship and that sort of thing, or do I go back to archaeology? And I think it's always having those opportunities that something will suddenly crop up, and it's about having that flexibility of mind to say, I'm not going to go this way, I'm going to try something new, or I'm going to follow my heart and follow my passions. And I had the opportunity to move to Ireland and work in Irish archaeology, which I did for 9 months, which was absolutely amazing. Moving from one part of Ireland to another, working on construction sites and road schemes, and drinking a lot, being in the pub a lot. Socialising is a big thing. But at the time I was in my 20s and it was absolutely amazing.
I think just experiencing that different culture is really exciting, isn't it, as well, to meet people who speak differently to you. With obviously Irish history is not exactly the same as English history, so you'll be learning a lot of different things. I think that's a great experience.
Yeah, and having the freedom to sort of be your own person and move around. So not only was I working in Ireland, but I travelled extensively through Ireland, and it was just amazing. As in, just to experience the same culture as in it's a different culture but with the same language, and yeah, as in I had an absolutely brilliant time. Came back to the UK and found an archaeology job I really enjoyed, and ended up falling over and breaking my ankle. And when I did that, because archaeology is very much a hand-to-mouth existence for especially sort of the entry-level things, I found that I was on the sick for 6 months, 8 weeks healing, with just basic income from the government because there wasn't any sick pay or anything. So in that time, I found office jobs in archaeology that I was quite interested in and got an interest in finds. Went back to university and studied sort of landscape archaeology, which is it's like geography and archaeology rolled in together. So it's about how landscapes evolve rather than sites evolved. So that's sort of a huge way of my thinking now, and got a real passion for objects. And then I graduated, and there were a whole raft of these jobs with the Portable Antiquities Scheme, which allowed me to sort of look at objects in a lot of detail, but then try and explain to people what they had found and how that fits with a sort of the landscape, the village, the parish, the sort of valley that they live in, or the hillside they live in, and you try and piece together the past from these physical objects. And it's
so
amazing.
What kind of objects do you find?
So I deal with everything. So I deal with anything which is human made. So the oldest thing I've recorded is a Paleolithic hand axe, which is about 50, 60,000 years old. And the most modern thing I've recorded is stuff from the Second World War, from prisoner of war camps. So there's a huge gambit of human history we look at. We tend to look at things which are more than 300 years old, so that's sort of from sort of the end of the English Civil War. And I deal a lot with the metal detecting community. So basically people who, as a hobby, go out with a metal detector, walk up and down a field, the machine goes ping and they dig up these objects. And they can be anything from scrap iron, an old bedstead, a bit off of a car, right the way through to sort of medieval and Roman coins, and sort of prehistoric objects. And my role is basically to borrow those, to look at them, to describe them, to photograph them, to say how they link to the archaeology of the place, so where they were found, but also how they fit within the regional and the national story. And part of that is sort of, I suck all of this information in it and then I give it back to the finder, so the person who found it. And it's then up to them what they do with it in the future with all of their knowledge.
Wow, sounds really interesting. So what's your favourite part of the job? What do you like best?
It depends on which day. So I basically, no 2 days are ever the same when I'm doing my job.
I can imagine.
I do a lot of it is sat, well, at the moment with the pandemic, a lot of it's just sat in front of a computer or with a phone, because I'm not actually physically meeting people, but I do a bit of everything. So I run sort of public open days in museums, where people bring these objects. I go out to metal detecting clubs and to finders clubs of an evening and a weekend. In the past, I've been out to rallies, so where, say, maybe 100 metal detectorists get together on a farm and go and look for stuff. I'll go out and see what they're finding. A lot of it is laborious. It's sort of sat there physically looking at an object and typing up a description of what it actually looks like rather than what I think it looks like. There's a lot of photography involved, so I'll be using cameras and Photoshop and things like that to make a digital record of the object. We now do sort of 3D modeling, so we'll make a 3D model of the object using photogrammetry, which is really exciting because then we've got an actual, it's not just a flat image, it's something you can play around with in the digital world. I also work alongside the coroner, so some objects are classed as treasure, and they have like a legal definition, and so there's quite a lot of sort of law that I have to understand, and then I have to interpret, and then I have to support people following the law. And so I sort of, I write specialist reports and sort of can appear in court and give evidence. So there's a huge range of variation as what I can do. And I've been doing this job for 16 years. So I always felt as if I'd sort of have a job and I'd moved on, or I'd move up a career ladder. And the idea of sitting and doing the same job for 16 years, if you'd said to me at 15, I'd be like, no, I won't be doing that. I'll be doing this and that, and it'd be amazing. But actually, it's the variety which is contained within the job, and it's the fact that I find it hugely satisfying that I've stayed in that same career and that same place and developed my knowledge and specialisms. So it's not always about sort of being the best and earning the most money and that sort of thing. It's actually about finding your own level of self-content and your sort of the fact that I can sort of, I'm always learning, I'm always finding the next thing. So last week I recorded a token, which is basically a coin which somebody's scribbled a rude word on. It's a very rude word, but that's actually from William III. And through my history knowledge, it's actually a token of Jacobite revolt. And within sort of 2 or 3 days, we'd done some research and found that the local MP for Shrewsbury lived and probably owned the piece of land this was found on. And he was arrested in 1716 as part of a Jacobite revolt. So the revolt of where sort of against Queen Anne and George I. So it's amazing how some of these little objects suddenly fit into like a county and a national story. And I hadn't got a clue about what Jacobites in Shropshire were doing until I'd spent a little bit of time looking at it. And that's the thing which, if you can find a job where you're always stimulated and you're always interested, then it doesn't always feel like a chore. It doesn't feel like, because going to work's hard, as in nobody really wants to work for a living, as in everybody would like as much free time as they possibly can. But if you can have as much fun and as much enjoyment and satisfaction through your work, then it means that it doesn't always feel like work when you're doing it.
Amazing, yeah, definitely. I think it's so interesting. Like, how can you have a more exciting job than finding treasure every day? I think it's a really cool thing. So, if somebody was interested in getting into this line of work, what would you advise them to do?
So I've been very lucky, and when I sort of was introduced to archaeology and museum work, I did some work experience as an A-level student in a museum. And the first thing on the first day, the curator told me was, "Oh, you don't want to do this. It's dead man's shoes." I was like, "What does that mean?" And he was basically like, "Well, somebody gets one of these jobs, they're in it, and if they don't die and they don't retire, then there's only a job every once in 20 years or so." And that really put me off. But actually, having worked in the sort of the industry, I know there's a huge amount of opportunities, and it's about having the flexibility to take advantage of those opportunities when you come up. So one of the best ways to prepare for that is well, study hard, study as hard as you can, get the best results you can out of your education. It's your one opportunity to push yourself forward, and it's in your hands. But at the same time, know that education isn't everything. If you've got spare time and you say you're doing a Duke of Edinburgh or something like that, look about volunteering. So volunteer in your sort of local museum. There are archaeological units. In Manchester, there's several archaeological units who work through Manchester. You've got an amazing museum service there as well. And in normal times, without a pandemic, you'd have the opportunities to do work experience and sort of go in and do elements of volunteering. And in Shropshire, that's what I've got several students who are doing A-levels and sort of degree work who come and support my work by helping me do things like take photographs and that sort of thing. And it's by building up that level of experience alongside the academic things that means that when those opportunities arise, you're able to say, "Oh, I can do this." So when I went for this job, one of the key things was they asked me about my photo skills. And because I'd always enjoyed taking photos and I'd done a little bit of photography and illustration at university, I was able to say to them, "Well, here's an example of the sort of the skills that I've got and how I've used them." And it's about having those sort of those little hooks that you can hang things on, and that you aren't just sort of, if you think of yourself as a pyramid, if you just take the top of that pyramid off and think about all those experiences you've got through it, that's the thing you need to sort of hook yourself on. Because if you're a one-trick pony, if you can just do one thing really well, you only have one opportunity to get that perfect job. If you can do lots of things and you have a broad spectrum of stuff that you can do, then I think that gives you a more stable opportunity. And then, yeah, when you've got that opportunity, grasp it with both hands and sort of invest yourself in it. Don't just say, "Oh, do you know what, I'm doing a Saturday job and it's just to earn money for PlayStation games." That's fine. That's brilliant. That's why you're doing it. But think about all those skills you've got. You're handling money, you're dealing with people, you're doing all of these things around it. And it's about trying to understand how those skills are really transferable to lots of other sort of places and times. And you don't know in 5 years' time whether you'll be relying on that Saturday job to get you the first step, because it makes you different to everybody else when you're sort of talking at an interview.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean that's 100% what we tell our pupils every single day. When you're in school and you stand up and you make a presentation, you're practicing for maybe you're going to have to present in front of your bosses. Even building your friendships and the way that you speak to teachers, the way you speak to canteen staff, the way that you speak to the cleaners in the school. This is all things that are preparing you for life when you go out and you do a job. Like you said, you know, you meet with different groups of enthusiasts, or you could be at a rally or something like that, and those interpersonal skills, being able to speak to people, are a massive asset to to anyone looking for any type of job. And it's obviously the academic qualifications show that you're hardworking, show that when you've got commitment and you want to work hard towards something, you'll achieve, you can achieve, and that's great. But you do need all of the other things as well. It's all about being a rounded individual, not just, like you said, a one-trick pony. So I think that's excellent. So, well, thank you so much for your time. I'm running out of time now, so I'm going to have to go. I could talk to you all day, I feel like. But I think as well, you would have been an amazing teacher. If anybody's got any questions, am I okay just to drop you an email with anything?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'll do is I'll send you some photos of the stuff that I do and some of the background. So if anybody's interested, they can get in touch. The scheme I work for covers England and Wales. So Manchester's got an amazing finance liaison officer called Heather. So I'll send you her contact details as well. And if anybody's really interested in volunteering, then it's something that you could email her about and say, well, look, Peter's spoken to us. Is there an opportunity for us to do something when the world returns to being normal? But yeah, as in, I think one of the things that we all like to do is to support people who are really interested to come through and be the next generation of archaeologists, because without your passion and your commitment to understanding the world you live in, as in our subject won't survive. It's not taught in in schools really at all. So anything we can do to support anybody who has that interest, we're very happy to do that. So send my email out, and if anybody gets in touch, I'll be really interested to have a chat with you.
Thank you. Right, thank you so much. Thanks very much, and we'll hopefully speak to you soon.
Thanks.
Okay.